it seems like Michael Diamond has given us the go-ahead, which means that our session is live and in progress, I seem to understand. Perfect, wonderful. In my mind, as we were waiting, Steve, I was thinking how hard it is to give a title to a specific talk, especially if it's a fireside chat.
Yeah.
Because you're going to cover so many things. It's a conversation. So try and give a title to a conversation. It's almost unauthentic, right?
Yeah.
It almost goes against the concept of the fireside chat itself.
Definitely.
And so to create some context to it, because it's always useful to the students, is to kind of go from the start, begin with the end in mind, and it's a return to authenticity. Which authenticity is something that we should have never had left to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So we should never return to something that we should have never had left. However, we're talking about a few specific steps of authenticity. Let's say the fundamental would be, how do you manage authenticity? What is the governance of authenticity? What are the things that make you understand, yes, I'm kind of trying very hard to be authentic.
Yep.
And the things that you and I have discussed that we would possibly touch upon in this conversation have been like, how do you keep your C-suite real? How do you create ideas that emerge bottom up? How do you keep the communication between your audience, both the sellers and the buyers, specifically with Poshmark, and create a communication directly with the CEO, which by definition terrifies me, just the idea.
Yeah.
But before we dive into it, I just wanted to let the students and the audience know that you and I have met each other for a while, and the way I normally like to start a presentation is by telling someone's superpower. And I think that in the time that we have collaborated as, let's say, students together, students of life more than anything,
yes,
your superpower has always been the person that spoke the least, perhaps in class, and you were always gathering class in the projects, in the meeting room, and you were gathering data points here and there, so that when it was your turn to speak, you would just hit a home run right away. So that would be your superpower, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, I definitely always try to be a better listener. I think that that's an area that in the past I felt I wasn't as good at. And so letting people first speak and then trying to first reiterate back to them has been something I've actually actively working on. And it's something that even as an executive, I know we all struggle, because we all feel, to your point, we want to be authentic about knowing what we're doing, but sometimes actually not knowing it and pretending to know it is far worse.
Of course, when you want to preempt the intention of the speaker, it never kind of works. You have to let them speak their mind fully.
Yes.
Before we dive into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of what is your role at Poshmark, if you can describe it to the students, because you know it's always lovely to be inspired by someone like you. So
great. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited. Like I said, I'm coming from the West Coast, and I actually formerly lived in New York. I was there for about 15 years before I moved to San Francisco 3 years ago for this role.
So you're a New Yorker.
Yes, I was actually a New Yorker, and I went to school in the East Coast. So I can tell you that the first thing I encountered moving to the West Coast was the fact that everything here just is a lot slower. Everyone starts a little bit later. Unlike New York, which has this pace and this energy that really matches to me, it required a lot of just life changes in terms of your energy level and working with others. But to that point, so I took a job being the chief marketing officer at Poshmark, which has been honestly a dream job. And I've been very fortunate because I've actually felt like most of my jobs have been dream jobs. I've loved every one of them. There's always something that I've learned. In the current role, I cover a huge gamut. I cover everything from performance marketing, a little bit of our product experience, product marketing, the brand, communications, creative, and sometimes even community, which is part of our event strategy. So I do cover a whole gamut, and it really truly is as expansive of a CMO role as you can. It's also a unique role in that most CMO roles, when it comes to technology companies these days, are harder to define. Right? Is your job to be this, the chief customer officer, or are you the chief technology officer? So I would say, relative to other executives, the only other person who has probably as much of a breath as I do, who has to change as many gears, is often the CEO. And I think that's something where, you know, if you're the CFO, you're kind of in the world of finance all day. If you're the operating officer, you're kind of in numbers all day. I'm having to change constant gears from, oh, what's the next big idea that we need to be looking at that's out there in the market, to, you know, how did our media campaigns do like 3 days ago, to, oh, wait, is our creative tone and language in our copy, you know, actually driving home the message we want. So it constantly requires so much changing gears, but that's honestly why I love it, because it is never the kind of role where every day it's the same thing. Every day it's like, okay, what is it today? And if you are the kind of individual that likes those kinds of challenges, to constantly be changing gears from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And like I said, it's not for everybody. It is the kind of role that I think, you know, people can aim for, knowing that that's the kind of superpower that hopefully they also have, which is that ability to listen, the ability to react, the ability to think thoughtfully.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard because there is some kind of a natural inclination to want, when you know something, there is a natural inclination to want to jump on it.
Yeah.
Immediately. And also, not everybody has, I can think directly in my family, not everybody has what we internally refer to as a squirrel mentality, whereby everything is, you have to change your attention 15,000 times. But did you always, so when I was, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, I either wanted to be a football player, or I wanted to have my own, I wanted to be successful with my metal band because we were real.
Yeah.
What did you want to be? What did you want to be growing up in terms of what was the authentic you at the time?
Yeah, so there are actually two things, because I think in high school, when I thought about what my superpower was at the time, that I did so naturally that it came to me easily. I was a champion debater. So I love arguing. But you know, involved in arguing is you have to constantly listen to the other person and really understand what the argument is, and then come up with your own argument. So I actually wanted to be a lawyer, because I think that I really love, I think, the practice and profession of law. I love the idea about argumentation and thinking through each argument and thinking through like the different dimensions of it. What I realized I don't like is I don't like reading a lot of briefs. I would fall asleep. It's just, I don't have the attention span for it. So I realized that that's never going to be me. And I think in college, I ended up realizing that I gravitated toward technology. I gravitated toward psychology, and I gravitated toward creativity. And I think those are all three things that ended up me being in a marketing path more on the technology side and consumer marketing side.
No wonder why Poshmark is your dream job, because you said technology, psychology, and creativity. That reminds me of Poshmark.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. That's why, like I said, as a marketer, I get to flex your brain in different ways, and so I think that's one of the most interesting things about these kinds of roles.
So it authentically, no pun intended, it came to you because you literally manifested the interconnection of these three things, these three essences.
Yep. And I think to your point, I will say I struggled like many people outside of college. I felt, oh, should I have been a consultant? Oh, should I have been a banker? And I actually tried those internships, but I never felt like I was truly there. I never felt that I was actually activating the thing that I was so good at that I couldn't wait to do more of. I felt like I was following everyone else. And so it really was hard, because I would say early in my career, people didn't realize what the hell I was doing. They're like, well, I'm at McKinsey, I'm at XYZ, I'm at Goldman. And I'm like, I don't really care. I'm going to do what I think I'm good at and what I love, because at the end, I have to live with myself every day. And so it was one of those, do I want to be the big fish in the small pond or the small fish in the big pond concept? So I said, let me go follow my own path, and, ended up in a better place than I thought I would be. And I'm very fortunate.
There is a friend of mine, his name is Vikal Kapoor. And during I think he's a 7th grader career talk, I can't believe this. So I come from Europe, right? And so to think that there is a career day in a 7th grade class, I'm thinking, why? How is that even possible?
Yeah.
But he often uses this wonderful analogy that I think it's a beautiful image. And he always says, if you want to climb up the ladder, make sure the ladder is on your wall, not on somebody else's wall.
Yes.
It's I don't know, it's a beautiful image, I think. Just make sure it is your wall, because otherwise it can be distracting. And also, more often than not, perhaps I'm not sure how much we are digressing, because this is part of authenticity, and companies are made by people. And people need to be authentic within themselves to express the best that they can in a corporate setting.
Exactly.
And so I think these topics are all interconnected. And I think a lot of people focus too much on the role that they want to have when they grow up instead of the lifestyle that they want to have when they grow up.
Exactly. I'll tell you, one of the other things that I remember after having tried a lot of internships is, and this is almost a seminal moment in decision, like that path, one day it'll go in my book, is the day I decided I didn't want to be in that kind of a job was like, I don't want to be in a job where I have to wear a suit, because a suit wasn't authentic to who I was. I wanted a job where I could wear casual, outfits. And by default, it like removed a whole number of companies out of that set, right? I can't really be a lawyer. I can't really be a banker, because I said the suit wasn't me. I didn't want to wear it every day. And it didn't represent who I was as an individual. So that's why it sort of said, oh, I guess I'll be in marketing and technology. And that at that time wasn't exactly considered like the most preeminent types of roles, but things have changed obviously. But even something like that, where choosing the kind of outfit that you wanted to be in that represented who you are as an individual almost set you on a different path.
It's interesting you think that, because the outfit is not something that we necessarily think as part of something that exudes authenticity. But in reality,
you have to wear every day.
It is, because it's not just what we say.
Yeah.
It's not just the job we do. It's also how we dress up, how we prepare for a meeting. It's in our behaviors.
Yes.
It's in our
how
behaviors,
we feel.
and so exactly, and especially when you get to a C-level role. There is this wonderful movie that I like very much, A Star is Born, the latest edition of the movie A Star is Born.
Yeah.
When I can't remember the name of that very good-looking actor.
Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper, talking to Lady Gaga, said, when you are out there on the stage, you have to dig deep to find out who you truly are. Because when you are exposed to that world, to the social media, to that crowd, if you're not authentic to yourself, it's going to be hard. And we all know how it, in that movie, ended up dramatically. However, for the purpose of that story, I think we need to be authentic from within if we want to be happy in the outside.
Completely. I agree with you.
And so which links really well with the first kind of technical point that I think it would be very interesting for the audience to understand more. Yeah. Which is more often than not, when I speak to, especially people outside of marketing, which is what we have to do, you and I have to do. We have to evangelize the concept of marketing to others outside of the marketing organization, because the concepts of marketing within our team, they are taken for granted.
Yes.
They think that marketing is communication. They don't think that communication is, that marketing is communication. They don't see communication as being one of the building blocks of marketing. And in the same way, they think that authenticity, it's in communication. Mm-hmm. It goes way beyond that, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It comes in just the way that you show up every day for your team, and the way that you communicate, and the way that even you express your ideas, right? Are these ideas that you think people want to hear, or are these ideas that really are organic to that moment that are coming up to you?
Yes. There is an element, of course, of organic, and then there are toughest things to do. Like, for example, I'm thinking about, products, or I'm thinking about the fees if you are a service. Yeah. How transparent are you in terms of your revenue structure? So I think that authenticity goes way beyond just communication. Because I think it was, Dean earlier on said, it's not just about how you talk, it's also how you make money.
Yes, no. So it's a great point. To that, it's like, so I think there is how you show up obviously in the front facing to your consumers. Like, what do you tell them about who you are, the initiatives that you want to align with, how you treat your employees and how you treat your customers. And along those lines, I think that authenticity lines to, well, what is the basic nature of how you interact with each other? How do you charge for a fee, especially if there's a fee structure? How do you also show up when things don't go well in the customer experience, right? And how do you and actually for us, it's really interesting. There's this element where we have a buyer and a seller, and we don't want to take sides because we're a marketplace. So how do you, in a situation
you stand in the middle, of course, you have this,
exactly. When you have a conflict, how do you assess being authentic to your brand when you shouldn't be taking sides. And how do you construct your architecture for resolution such that everyone feels like, okay, I'm happy about the resolution. I didn't feel like one took side on the other. And I think that's the general nature of these marketplaces. They're always the hardest because you have to be the middle person.
Speed of reaction. It's something that Dean in the previous talk referred to. And what I gathered from his advice was, especially in a marketplace circumstance where you immediately have to theoretically react, the word immediately, I think it's only second to the word thoughtfully.
Yes.
But it's not always easy to balance, is it? Like, for example, even in the organization of this event, some people was against the fact that, I don't know, we should have talked about authenticity. Why aren't you also talking about this, and that? This is unacceptable. We have a tendency of being very offended lately about almost everything. How can you manage all that and be loving where you want to give an immediate answer, but at the same time, you don't want to be not authentic? How do you manage that?
I have a great story on this because from, I think one of the most difficult things about my role is that there are a lot of things that we end up doing that sometimes we don't realize. We work through a lot of third parties, right? And there's probably a situation like in the summer of 2020 where some of my advertising ended up on a different network. And I would say, not to be named network, but it was a network that's highly controversial. It's a television network that a lot of people don't like. And, you know, I buy it through a third party. So sometimes I actually don't know where it actually ends up.
Well, you cannot possibly know. It's yes, of course.
Exactly. And then you get aligned to it. And suddenly, you know, a major newspaper's calling you and saying, well, why do you believe this, like, person's blah, 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 blah. And I really had, you know, there was a choice of us to not say anything. And if we said nothing, it would have been like, well, it's not our fault. It's a third party fault, right? I actually advocated like we should say something because at the end, this was something that we didn't really intend, or the level of advertising was so minimal compared to say others that it was meant to be probably a test on my team. And, you know, I probably could have reacted and yelled at everyone, but I actually said, hey guys, this isn't something we can control. We're trying to do our best. And at the end of the day, I said, look, our job is to make sure that our products are out there to be seen, because if our sellers are selling, then they're putting food on the table. So in some sense, even my decision around whether or not I'm going to align with a specific, you know, thought process or a specific dialogue or an ideology almost gets superseded by the fact that we represent millions of sellers. And if we don't advertise, they don't sell. And when they don't sell, they don't put food on the table. And this was the summer of 2020 when we were at the height of just everyone's craziness of COVID and the economy kind of in a seesaw. And so really sometimes authenticity is also standing up for what you really believe, saying something about it, and also realizing, well, how do you speak to your audience? How do you speak to your team? And say, what was the decision that was made, and standing by it.
So your behavior was actually typical of you, because it was pause, think, strategize, react. Yes. It was not let's rush, all hands on deck. It was not like that.
Yeah, no, and really, I would say, especially for these, whether it's this role or any, I think the senior execs, everyone wants to rush immediately if the CEO wants to do something, right? He says something, I'm usually always like, hold on, is that really what he wants? Is there another way of thinking about this? Am I missing something? And I think even that thought process, I had to really develop that muscle over time, because it is so hard not to want to react. Like, you want to act with speed, but first you can say, let me think about it. And then let me react. Actually, and it's a great example, whenever you do interviews, like I always tell, when I coach people, I tell them, when someone asks you a question that you actually don't know, don't immediately say, don't run into the answer. Just say, hey, can I get a minute to think about it? And compose your thoughts and then actually answer it. That entire process actually speaks a lot to you as an individual, that you are able to think first before responding. And it should make your thoughtful response a lot deeper, and actually should impress the person, versus even if you have the answer and rushing into it, the person's like, wait, did they rehearse this? And that's when it feels less authentic. So sometimes just giving yourself that moment to just think first and to breathe and center, so that you can have a truly authentic answer that is more about the fact that you are in an interview process, and it's not a television script that you're going through.
What you're describing right now, yes, is part of governance, but it's more behavioral governance rather than procedural governance.
Yes.
And that's something that we have a tendency, at least at Seven Train, to coach for it. And it's part of the things that we take pride in kind of, because these are the things that can make you save 2 days in just 10 minutes because you decide not to go into a rabbit hole.
Yes.
So it's literally as simple as that. When it comes to reaction, there is something that I referred to at the beginning of our conversation, and that I am genuinely really curious, because I would have anxiety issues at doing it as you do. And I respect you for that. I commend you for that. There is a group of users, super users, that you have at Poshmark, both on the seller side and in the buyer side, that have direct access to the C-suite.
Yep.
And those conversations could potentially, if something goes bad, be out in the public very easily.
Yeah, no, I can tell you that it's definitely something, if you think about the old sort of marketing model, right? And I would look back at that where, if I worked at my time in American Express, where everything was very, very structured in conversation. Like if you ever want to talk to someone, there's like 5 gatekeepers. It definitely does not gel well with that model. But I think in my world where, our founders have built the company from the ground up, they have worked with a lot of our sellers from the very beginning, and the company's over 10 years old. I think there is a level of connection and there's a level of honesty and communication between, like I said, a number of our sellers and buyers with our CEO and a number of our C-suite. And it's a kind of connection that just because we're now a public company, just because we're now a larger company, does not mean it should go away. I think I often say that customers who complain or customers who give great feedback are the ones you want to listen to because these people care. Right. Well, you don't want our customers who don't say anything at all, because they're the customers who are likely to be a lot less loyal. They're a lot more fickle. I call them a lot more promiscuous. They'll go to different marketplaces and platforms. But people, one thing that I've realized, just often want to be heard. And if you can take the time, whether it's in a DM or an event or in an email, and respond to them and let them be heard, that goes, I would say, so much farther to building strong word of mouth and to building strong advocacy of your brand. Because like I said, how many times have you had a bad experience with a platform or a service or a product, and just trying to figure out how to communicate with someone is like a nightmare. I mean, I try to call customer service for a certain bank and I find out, oh, great, I can't seem to get to someone on a weekend. And I think that is the norm now of like how to farm out customer service, how to farm out feedback. And what I've learned from the best companies is that there's always an access to the top that you can give feedback and hopefully someone sees it. But for us, it does make me nervous. But what I do believe and trust in is that our senior leaders have developed a relationship with these individuals and that the way they interact with them is authentic. And there's this expectation of honesty, but also trust. And I think it's one of those, if you go in with the idea of distrusting people, then that's kind of the energy you give back. But if you go in saying, I want to hear you, I want to see what you have to say. And obviously there's some party lines we have to be very careful on. I know that even now as a public company, a lot of things that we can say, can't say, could be misconstrued. So there's a level of training on what we can deal with and not. But I think at the end, if it's about engaging with the customer, listening to their feedback, acknowledging it and validating it, I think that is easily handled in a one-on-one communication and doesn't have to go through a formal channel. And I'm happy with that, because I think it means we trust everyone to be adults and to also figure out how to interact with customers in a proper way.
Which I'm sure you can also respond to that in case something bad happens. You can always respond to that conversation was intended to be a personal conversation between the executive and an organization and one of his or her advisors. Because what they're doing, they are in an extent advising. So I think that the solution you found to establish that level of authenticity is that there is actually a code of conduct.
Yes.
That people abide to before entering in that type of relationship.
It's what you said. It's like it's a behavioral governance sort of mental model, less of procedural, because I think in larger companies, there's a lot of procedural governance in terms of these communications. But I think in a lot of these tech companies, there's a bit more of this organic slash like behavioral governance of like how we're going to interact with each other, because there is this desire to want to get to know the customer a lot more, because that's where your best ideas come from. That's where your next product ideas come from. Those pain points that those customers are telling you are the solution to problems that you're going to be creating that can expand to millions more of other users.
You repeated the word technology a few times and you sprinkled it here and there. Do you see yourself as a technology company or as a fast-moving consumer goods company? Because you are. Which one is your authentic you, if there needs to be an answer to that question?
So I think of us as a platform slash, this is actually something we've had a debate on. Marketplace platform, technology service, software as a service. At the end, we are a technology company that manages and builds a software that have a lot of inputs and outputs with people involved in it. There's no actual physical good. And so by that default, the platform and people's experience with it is our product, right? I think even of my time at American Express, we thought of our marketing as service-based marketing, which is how do I make sure that when you sign up for the credit card, everything from your onboarding to your purchasing experiences is a fantastic experience that reminds you about why you have the card, creates emotion. Because for a lot of these platforms, whether it's myself, think about it, right? A good example is you have a utility company or a cable company. Those are all utilities too. They're not actual physical goods. So sometimes there is an actual box, but at the end, your experience with them is incredibly, usually sterile. You're like, you get a bill, you have to call, there's a customer service. There's a lack of the ability to actually create the emotional connection. Like, oh my gosh, I love cable TV. Whereas like with technology products, you want, if you can say, oh my gosh, I love XYZ product, it means that you have created an amazing solution to a pain point that people have. And one framework I often like whenever I talk to people who are either pitching companies to me or telling me their ideas is, I would say, is your product a vitamin or a painkiller, right? And if you think of even just that simple framework, like a vitamin is something that's like nice to have, but if shit hits the fan, you're sort of going to ditch it. But a painkiller is something that is solving a problem, you're going to want more of it, it's highly addictive. You would never say you love it, but you know that it's solving a problem that you have. And if you think about technology companies, a lot of them are painkillers, right? They're solving a problem, so no matter what the issues are that might be arising, you're going to keep using it because it's almost like what Clay Christensen said. It's an actor that you've hired, right? That like products are people that you're hiring to solve a problem in your life, and they're no longer solving it. They're going to move on. So when I think of the technology company as a service-based company, it goes back to the idea that we are creating a service, we're creating a function, and we're creating and solving a problem for someone. And for us, it was how do we make selling a lot easier for people, so that it's easier than selling on eBay, it's easier than selling on other platforms, and it's using a lot of the common channels that you already know. So I think that was like the brilliant idea that my CEO and the founders found 10 years ago is this is going to be a new way of buying and selling.
Do you think that value proposition and authenticity, they go hand in hand in this specific case? Like what you just described, probably value proposition is the first, conceiving it as the inception of everything else that happens in an organization. It's the first step towards authenticity is to build your own value proposition, probably.
Yep. It is. It's to say, why are you building this product? Like, who is the audience and why? Is it because of your own experience? And I think for a lot of great founder stories, it's usually because of a problem that they encountered. And they said, wait, this is terrible. How do I fix this? And from there germinates this amazing idea. Then you realize actually has a huge addressable market. And I think that's where, like I said, I've loved working for technology companies because so much of what a founder or a CEO's vision has always been, even though it might be in year 10, it's still very similar to that year one moment where they realize this is a business I want to build. And they really hold on to that as their mission. And that's incredibly addictive for someone like me who I've never started my own company, but if I can find someone's vision and help that come to life, it's equally exciting for me.
And if you ever do, please come to me first.
Hopefully one day.
Let me know. Let me know.
Yeah.
So among the many things that we have discussed, I kind of want to kind of look back for a second for the purpose of the audience and the students to kind of create a framework around the things that we have discussed.
Yeah.
Authenticity starts, the ignition of authenticity starts with a personal identity and personal authenticity, which can be managed through behavioral governance rather than procedural governance.
Yep.
And so behavioral governance becomes very important for them. You know, if there is two things that they bring back home from this specific talk, is probably going to be, if I was talking to my kids right now, I would say, make sure that your behaviors are authentic to who you are, and they also adhere to the rest of the world as well, because we don't act as islands in life. Yep. We have to interact with the rest of the world. Yep. And the second thing that we have just described is the importance, from a very practical perspective, to have the value proposition scanned and organized in a clear way. Then whichever framework they want to use, if they want to use a flywheel, if they want to use, you can go on Google, you can find a myriad of different frameworks to use your value proposition. But would you say that these could be two things to bring home?
No, I agree. I think that's a great crystallization of when you think about authenticity as it relates to sort of the individual and as it relates to sort of the organization. That definite value proposition is really critical, because the larger the org, the higher the chance of being less authentic. Because of procedures, to your point, because of processes, because of expectations. But if your value proposition or your mission is very clear from the very beginning and everyone imbues it from day one, then whether you are the CEO, you are a customer service rep, you're a marketer, you're a finance person, you're going to represent the company's core value proposition in the most authentic way to any one of your friends and family and to any new potential customers. And I think that's, to me, that's the holy grail that every company should achieve, to strive for, is that every person is speaking the same thing about what we stand for.
Yeah. And about technology, actually, you just made me realize how, you made me remember when I was at GE and I was in charge for global sales enablement, right? Yeah. And you know, that's 11,000 people. It's not really that. And so plus the product leaders, by the way, and plus the marketing teams on top of that. And the role that technology had in managing distributed value proposition methodologies over 17 different countries. Technology, that technology that we use without making any names, it's definitely not a nice to have. Yeah. It's kind of a must have. Because otherwise it would have been all over the place. So technology plays a very, very important role. I know that I have just received a message saying we have 3 minutes left, 4 minutes left, whatever it is. I would never want to, Tatiana, please tell us what we have to do.
Yes, sorry for interrupting. Thank you for being here. It was extremely interesting. We have some questions from the audience. So the first one is for Steve. What are the biggest tangible differences between working in marketing in a young company such as Poshmark versus a more established one as American Express?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. So the way I would approach this is that the two kinds of companies, and the way I thought about it, is when you're in an established company, it's about learning. It's about learning from others, because there's a lot of systems and processes that have been built. And so if you are, as an individual, in a learning mode, a big company like American Express is a great place to be at. But if you as an individual are in a desire to have impact mode, right? Like you want to actually see the results of your work. You actually want to, you get joy by like seeing the output of a product you build, then younger companies are probably more your shot. And whenever people are asking me, it's a great question, because I often have to ask this for people who are sometimes out of college, sometimes out of business school, and saying, where should I go? And I always ask them, like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to learn or do you want to have impact? And if you can simplify almost sometimes to the core of that person, to, you know, to back to our topic of what is it that you want? Are you fearful that you're not good at what you do yet, so then you should go learn. But if you feel like you already have what you want and you want to learn on the job, but you want to make impact and that gets you up in the morning, then you should go to a smaller company. And I think that's a simplified version of it. But to me, those are both speak to who you are as an individual. There are different benefits, by the way. You can move up a lot faster in a smaller company, title-wise. But at the same time, you're also sometimes missing a lot of bigger learnings. Like I know at American Express, learning how to be a leader was one of the most important things that I took away from that company. You work with a significant amount of smart people. So sometimes you can't go in a room and think that you're the smartest person, because you definitely are not. And other people are equally smart. And I think it teaches you a certain amount of humility about how to learn from others, how to ask others for help. And sometimes you don't get that in a smaller company because you've got a task, you've got a job, and you have a finite amount of time, and your next round of funding or your next set of goals are there. So I always advocate, and like I said, I've been very fortunate that I've actually toggled between these 10,000 person companies and these high growth companies, and I'm able to take experiences that I've learned on both and apply. To me, it's an amazing opportunity if you can do that, because sometimes you could start in small companies and realize, oh, geez, I probably should go to a big one and get some credibility and learn. Or sometimes you're at a big company for a while and you're like, you know what? I'm kind of getting tired. I really want to see the value of my work. And I think that's when I always advocate for people to go to a smaller company.
Perfect, thank you. We can do one more. What big challenges are you seeing in the industry right now? And which of them are you solving?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of challenges. So I don't know if we can solve all of them. I would say that, probably one of the biggest issues that we have right now is just trying to understand how to navigate this post-COVID world. Our business has changed so much in the last 3 years. And in fact, I'm actually starting this work stream right now where we're trying to think about what is the brand strategy for our business for the next 2 to 5 to 10 years. And I'm almost thinking it was a great thing to start this work stream now versus 3 years ago, because if I started 3 years ago, I probably would have to scrap it given everything that happened in the last 2 years. Every marketer has had to change their game plan. So I would say that there's probably a couple of things that we want to tackle, which is really trying to understand how sustainability and circularity have become a much bigger topic now than before. And it's very organic to who we are, we talked about it's very authentic to our brand that we're sustainable. But we actually don't talk about it that much, right? We're very much like, okay, we're a buying and selling platform, but sustainability and circularity are core to our essence and to our value prop. We just don't happen to promote it. How should we do it? How should we approach that? Because it's such a big topic, but we want to do it to what we said in an authentic way. We don't want to just slap on that, oh, we're sustainable, but not have any data to back that up. Like, what's our carbon footprint? So we're actually going through an exercise of making sure that when we do this, we have the right data, so we're just not greenwashing. I think the second part is how to continue to help people. I think the entire working industry has changed in the last 2 years. Many more people now have side hustles on top of their day jobs. How do we continue to be part of that conversation? Because our job is, like I said, not just to help you make money, but to help you sell what's in your store, but also to help you create a meaningful revenue stream that maybe, your life has been disrupted and that job you had wasn't good enough. How can we be a part of that solution? So I think for us, it's continuing on those paths, especially because those are two top of mind issues that are affecting everyone and all generations.
Perfect, thank you for responding. I think we're out of time. So we won't be answering any more questions. I don't know if you want to say a final.
See, it's been a pleasure learning from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the event. Take care.